of touchdown of Perseverance rover Mars, ready to begin seeking the science of past life, the NASA Mission Control Center in Pasadena, California had erupted in joy and high fives. A video of that moment from April 18, 2021 has since gone viral, and congratulations have continued to pour in. One standout reaction was, look, she's wearing a bindi and driving a rocket. Any guesses as to whom they were talking about? Yes? They were gushing about a bindi-sporting Indian-American aerospace engineer who had skillfully landed the spacecraft after a 7-month, 300 million mile journey, and the very exciting reason why we are all assembled here today. Good morning and a very warm welcome to our session with NASA scientist Dr. Swati Mohan. I'll request Education Officer BITM Shri T.K. Sengupta to please welcome her with a small felicitation. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Swati Mohan, Mars 2020 Guidance, Navigation and Controls Operation Lead, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena, California. We look forward to learning from you, Dr. Mohan. Today's session will not have been possible without the initiative and support of US Consulate General, Kolkata. Please welcome us in welcoming Mr. Juan Clark, Public Diplomacy Officer and Assistant Director, American Center, Kolkata. We welcome you, sir. I'll now request one of the participants to please felicitate Education Officer, Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, Shri T.K. Sengupta. Can we have a round of applause, please? I'll now welcome to the podium Shri Sengupta to address the audience. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. And we are privileged and lucky to have Dr. Mohan with us. We want to share her journey, where to hopefully we'll be getting a mesmerizing feeling and experience through her talk. I just want to brief BITM because all of you know about him, so let me brief a little bit of our museum. This is the oldest science museum of our country. 1959, 2nd May, we started this journey. And because of the success of this museum, Government of India started thinking of setting up a body and making more science centers. So National Council of Science Museums formed in 1979, and then a lot of science centers coming up. And the mission, ma'am, is Prime Minister's mission is in 2047, that is 100 years of our independence, every district of India should have a science center, so that we can disseminate, we can send the messages, we can be bridge between persons like Dr. Mohan and renowned persons all over the world and India. We can be bridge between you and them, so that you get motivated, work in science, believe in science, and lead a good, successful career. I'll not be taking much time. I don't want to be between this. So on behalf of Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, on behalf of Director Birla Industrial and Technological Museum and National Council of Science Museums, I welcome all of you. Enjoy this session, and let us give a very good round of applause to because our guest today, Dr. Mohan and Mr. Clark. Please.
Thank you, sir. I welcome to the podium Mr. Juan Clark, Public Diplomacy Officer and Assistant Director, American Center, Kolkata, to initiate the session today. Over to you, sir.
Good Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Great. So my name is Juan. I work at the U.S. Consulate in Kolkata. Our job as part of the consulate is to create closer ties between the people of the U.S. and the people of India. And today, I could not think of a better example of the embodiment of the people-to-people ties between the U.S. and India than Dr. Swati Mohan, who's here. Dr. Mohan was actually born in India and then moved to the United States, where she studied at Cornell University, her bachelor's degree, then MIT, her master's and PhD, then ended up working at NASA in different projects, now works at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, and then she's back in India again. So it's a full circle of the connections that the US and India share very deeper levels. Also, from the government perspective, NASA has been cooperated with Israel more and more increasingly these past years, and both President Biden and Prime Minister Modi have highlighted the importance of space cooperation between our two countries. In addition, as India is developing its aerospace industry, you have an increased number of American investments and technology transfer in the aerospace industry in India. Before I call Dr. Mohan on stage, I want to thank BITM, and I also wanted to note the amazing job of Mr. Sengupta here, who's been here for 37 years facilitating programs like this. So please give a round of applause to Mr. Tushar Sengupta for his continuous dedication and commitment to facilitating science education to the youth of India. And with that, I have the immense honor of passing the microphone and welcoming Dr. Swati Mohan, who's going to share her inspiring life journey with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll take a few minutes to clear the settings. So please take your seats in the audience while we set up the stage for the speaker.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good? Okay, a little bit more energy. How's everybody doing today? Okay. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Swati. Thank you for the lovely introduction by Mr. Sengupta and Mr. Kaur. I will give you a little bit of introduction about who I think of as myself, and then talk about my personal journey of how I got to where I am today. So a little bit about me. My official title at NASA is Guidance, Navigation, and Controls Operations Lead for NASA's Mars 2020 Perseverance mission. That is a lot of words to say that I am a rocket scientist, but more importantly, I'm a space nerd. I love everything about space, and I like working in space and working with space. But more importantly from that, I am an engineer. And what that means to me is that I like building things. I like making things and seeing them work. The second aspect is that I'm an Indian American. I like to keep both cultures with me. I was born in India, raised in America, but have one foot in each culture, coming back and forth. And then finally, now that I'm all grown up, I am a wife and a mother. I have 2 young daughters, actually probably the age of some of you in here, age 8 and 12. So I have some experience explaining my job to them on a daily basis. So hopefully this presentation will go okay. So in talking about my life journey, I'm going to frame it. Is that better? Okay. I'm going to frame it in terms of advice. I have 3 big pieces of advice looking back on my journey of what I think was helpful to me to get to where I am. And I'll go over a little bit more detail of each of these as I talk. But the first one is to really know who you are and understand what you like and what is important to you and what your skills are. The second one is to create a good support system for yourself. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. And then finally, to actively do your best while trying to pursue your education. So going a little bit more into the first one, how do you figure out who you are and what is important to you? So in my journey, going from the little Indian girl at the top right to JPL, how many of you thought that when I was this little girl up here, I knew exactly what I wanted to do and that I wanted to be in mission control doing space stuff? How many of you think that I had no idea what I wanted to do? Nice. It's actually somewhere in between. I certainly had no idea that I wanted to work in space. I didn't even think that that was a career. But growing up in my household and in my extended family, there were kind of 2 options, 2 primary options of what I had heard listening to of what one could be when they grew up. You are either a doctor or you're an engineer. So for me, most of my father and my uncles were engineers. I didn't think that as a girl that was something that I could do. So I said, okay, I will be a doctor. Yes. Is the buttons not working? Maybe? I might have to ask you to hit next. So I actually thought I wanted to be a doctor for the longest time, all through my K through 12 standard, through 11th standard. Not that I knew what being a doctor meant, but just that if I said it to adults, they got very happy. And they said, very good child, yes, that's a good thing to be. So it reinforced that that's what I should be, even though I had no idea what it meant to be a doctor. When I was about 8 years old, I saw a TV show, my first episode of a TV show called Star Trek: The Next Generation. How many of you have seen any science fiction or Star Trek? Oh, that's actually a pretty good number. So when I saw Star Trek: The Next Generation, I was still very young, so I didn't know what was happening in the storyline. I just knew that there were really pretty pictures. Pictures like the ones that you see here, and these people were getting to fly or getting to go to places that looked super cool. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I want to be able to go there. That's when I realized that it was set, hundreds of years in the future, and that's not actually something that a person could do. But at least it ignited a spark. Now, you might think that, oh, this is the moment where I decided that I loved space and wanted to do everything about space. It's actually not, and I point that out because though I saw the episode and I enjoyed space, looking back, that's the moment that I can remember actually thinking about, oh, space is cool. But it was a very slow realization. It was very intermixed within everything else. I played with my dolls, I played jump rope outside, I played with my friends. This was just another thing that seemed cool, and I would read some books on it, not always all, but it became a persistent thing in the background that I would when I got a chance, I would read about a book or space or watch a science fiction television show. It started to always be there in the background. But I was still fully committed to being a doctor. I tried working at the hospital, I tried shadowing my aunt. It didn't come easily to me. I had my first dissection lab in school, and the smell from the formaldehyde of the machines were really nauseous, and I got sick and I had to leave the classroom at the end of the dissection. Memorization of all the parts of a cell was really difficult to me, but I had said I wanted to be a doctor, so I was really trying hard at that point. And then in 11th standard, I had my first physics class in high school. And here's where the importance of having a good teacher matters. My physics teacher was actually trained as an engineer, and he was a really good teacher. And for the first time in his class, I understood what physics meant. And compared to the struggles that I'd had in biology, physics made sense. I loved the fact that it was one equation. You didn't have to memorize anything. If you understood that one equation, then you could figure out the rest of it. So that started to plant the seeds of doubt that maybe there's something else that I'm better at that I should try for than this medicine route. Later that same year, I had the opportunity to go to space camp. How many of you have heard about the US space camp? A few. So space camp is like a week of pretending that you're an astronaut and getting to play. It was a phenomenal experience. You spend the mornings learning about space history and different space phenomena like black holes and planets, and then you spend the afternoon in mock-ups and astronaut training and pretending to be in mission control and pretending to be an astronaut in these different facilities. It was so much fun. But the moment that actually made it real was in one of the jobs in the sessions. They had us pretend to do a mission, and one of the rotations was in mission control. And I remember going into mission control, putting on the headset, and opening the binder. And of all the places, there was something that felt real about it, and I suddenly had the thought of, oh, this is actually a job. Like it's not a job like an astronaut where only a few select people get to go, but this is actually a job that one can do, that one can aspire to. And that started tipping me from going into medicine to maybe I should explore engineering in space because I'm better at it, I like space, and now I start to understand that there are jobs there, what it means to actually have a job in aerospace engineering. Okay, so from there I switched wholesale in 11th standard. I dropped the medicine entirely and went full speed into trying to do aerospace engineer. This was at the very early days of the internet, so it had very slow dial-up at home, but I tried to research different opportunities. I found one at Goddard Space Flight Center for 2 weeks, and as part of those 2 weeks, I built my first rocket here with other interns, which was super fun. And then based on that, those two combined, which I really had loved, I decided to go to Cornell in order to pursue aerospace engineering. And I picked Cornell, I picked universities in general to apply to. Cornell was the one that I got into, that I specifically picked because they had affiliations to different space programs. They were actively working with JPL on a Mars rover project, the Spirit and Opportunity rovers. At that time, they were part in collaboration with the Arecibo telescope in Chile, which sadly right now is not functional, but at the time it was one of the big telescopes. And it allowed me a lot of room to explore whether I wanted to go into space itself and astronomy, because I didn't know at that point engineering or science, or if I wanted to build things like being an engineer. So I joined Cornell in the year 2000, and then started my journey of trying to figure out where in space I wanted to find my path. So I chose the engineering department, and I ended up graduating in 2004. But during that time, those 4 years, I really spent effort exploring the different areas of space engineering to try to find which one appealed to me. So my undergraduate research was in a CubeSat, which was just starting at that time. Basically, shoebox-sized satellites that you could build as a student that came with all different parts, and you could launch them and have do science. So this was an example of the one that we built. It was very tiny, only 10 centimeters across, about this big. And my part was the attitude, determination, and control portion, which was figuring out how to keep this thing stably pointed downwards, which we actually ended up using a boom like this. One of the other projects that I did was with Kennedy Space Center. Early on, I thought, oh, maybe if I had liked biology, I should try to do something space biology and kind of mix both worlds that I thought I was interested in. I very quickly learned that I do not care about plants as much, and that was not a good fit for me at all. And then I found the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. My first internship at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory was coming up with mission concepts to go to Uranus and Neptune, and this I thought was like, this is exploration. This is what it was like to be in that Star Trek episode where you're actively trying to go find new worlds. There was something about that that was very appealing to me in terms of the exploration portion of that, the figuring out how to get somewhere that no one had ever been to before. That really appealed to me, so I had a big check mark, and I liked JPL. And then the second part, the second semester I went back because I said, oh, I love this place. And then I worked on Mars, which maybe you think this relates later in joining Mars, but actually I did not have a good experience that year because my entire internship was combing through a series of these pictures. And if you guys see these tiny black lines on these pictures, my entire internship was counting the black lines, 1 pixel by pixel. Every pixel, putting them in a spreadsheet, copying it over, and going through hundreds and hundreds of those. It's not very fun, and very monotonous, and by the end of the summer, I did not like Mars at all, unfortunately. 15 years later, I found out that this was actually a very useful project because those dark streaks that I had no idea what they were called recurring slope lineae, and they were part of the proof that scientists use that there's actually liquid water currently on Mars because that's what's causing the darker material to actually flow down. So I didn't know it at the time, and it was super boring, but that research was really important in the long run, even if it did turn me off to Mars for a great number of years. So after all these internships, I decided I didn't like the science portion of it, like the Mars portion. I didn't like the biology. I had liked the attitude control system. I liked building the satellite, and I liked being at JPL. So that's what I decided I was going to do. But to do attitude controls, I needed a little bit more schooling. A lot of the schooling for that is very math intensive, so I had to go to graduate school to actually learn it. This is where a little bit of luck comes into my journey. So I went to MIT for graduate school. Actually, the advisor that I worked with at Cornell on that satellite project, he had gotten his PhD from the lab that I went to at MIT, so there was a connection there. And I worked on a mission called SEERS. Now, this timing was very lucky because the SEERS satellites were supposed to operate on the International Space Station, but because of the Shuttle Columbia accident, the space shuttles had been grounded for several years. They weren't being flown. 2 months after I joined MIT, we got the phone call saying they were going to start the program again, and the SEERS satellites were going to be the first payload that was going to be launched in the next shuttle mission to happen after Columbia. So within 2 months, suddenly this whole program got a kickstart because it was going to be on the International Space Station. So I was there for 5 years. I got to work with data of the SEERS satellites while they were actually in space, which was really, really cool. We built our own mission control center at MIT. I got to talk to the astronauts while I was at MIT. I got to train the astronauts to operate it, which was an incredible experience and really served to solidify the fact that I liked building things, I liked working with objects in space, and that I could do this communication that was really valuable between the spacecraft and in mission control. So after I finished my PhD in 2010, I went back to JPL and I worked on a couple of different missions. So In between undergrad and graduate school, I'd worked on the Cassini mission. Again, timing was very lucky for me. I worked on it only for 1 year, but that was the year that Cassini reached Saturn and deployed the Huygens probe release. So I was on this mission with people who had worked on it my entire lifetime, and I came for the 1 year that it actually got to Saturn, which was a lot of luck. But after that, I worked on Grail, which was the first of a kind around the moon. Optiques, which was one of my favorite projects because it was my doctoral thesis come to life. Unfortunately, it got canceled. It was a little too complicated first time, so it never got past a certain design stage. And OCO3, all of these within 2 or 3 years. And then finally, I got placed on Mars 2020 in 2013 at the very early phases of Mars 2020. And part of that was because I had mentors in my field who had saw the capability. So I was still a little young for the role that they give me, but they intended it to be there for a long time and to pick up as I go. So I was on Mars 2020 for 8 years in almost the same role throughout the entire time, which for nowadays generation seems like a lifetime. For 8 years to stay on the same mission, same role, no promotions, no very small pay raises. But in that 8 years, working the entirety of the mission from, it was just a piece of paper when I started, a blank sheet of paper when I started, to landing on Mars, you built the technical expertise by seeing something all the way through. I helped design it, I helped write what it needed to do, and then I built it, and then I tested it, and then we launched and through it. So getting that experience to do the whole process really helped to focus the technical expertise and to get down to the nitty-gritty, not just at the high level, but all the way down in getting the job done at the lowest level and seeing how that contributed to the higher level. So this is my personal journey, and it really took at every step, at every hardship, whether it was deciding what to go into in terms of a major in undergraduate, to figuring out what I liked before I even really appreciated what I liked, and being honest with myself of what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, and using that to pick the next opportunity, using that to pick the next path before I landed where I did. It wasn't that I had this in mind, that particular mission or that particular role, but it came through the journey and being honest with myself of who I was and what I was interested in, what I was good at, in picking those things that were honest to who I was that eventually led me to being in mission control on landing day. So being honest that I was much better at understanding and applying than in memorizing, that I liked to build things, just looking at the analytics of science data and the waiting for measurements. That didn't quite appeal to me. I liked being hands-on. And then the space exploration, the exploration part of that, to go to a new world, that was the part that was exciting to me. And then the part that I liked when I found out I did it in March 2020 was the system engineering, and that's a little bit of a nuanced phrase in the technical community, but basically it means how do you piece things together. So it's not just one field here and one field there, but my role was in the intersection of two fields and being able to communicate between two fields and kind of being the glue between multiple different fields as opposed to just in one area, which I like. Being able to connect to many different people working in large teams. That's what I realized I liked too. So this was a great journey. I certainly did not do it by myself. In every way there's hardships. Having a really good support system was crucial to being able to get every step of the way. I was very lucky in that my parents were super supportive of anything education related. Their ability to send me to space camp when I was young was a huge gift because it's quite expensive and we weren't all that well off. So it was a hardship, but they prioritized that and it changed my life. I know some people don't necessarily have family support, but the friends that you make also are very crucial in building that. The ones who will support you, support your dreams, not belittle them or not look down on them or not tell you not to aim for something that you want, even if it may seem like you're trying to reach for a distant galaxy out of this world. the true friends that you'll have are the ones that will encourage you with a bit of realism and help you in being able to find the motivation and find the goals that you want to do. The next big portion of it for me was also finding those friends in the technical field that I had chosen. Controls is a very math-heavy field, so all through undergrad, even before when I was in physics class, that there weren't a lot of females in any of the classes that I was taking, whether it was computer science or physics, or in my math classes in undergrad. And when I got to graduate school, I happened to be there at a time where there was a little bit of a confluence of females. I mean, not a lot, there was 3 of us instead of 1 of us, so, but it was enough to form a bond and show what it can feel like when there is a little bit more equity. And that really helped to keep me going and to form a solid network, not just of mentors and family, but of friends and then women actually in the field to help keep us motivated each other to pursue it in a fairly male-dominated field that it still is right now. And then finally, very important in choosing your spouse, because I know you guys are a little bit young for that right now, but eventually they will be the most important person in your life, especially when you're trying to balance this work and home life. My husband himself is a career, he is a physician, so trying to balance both of our careers is not always easy, but the fact that he also came from a 2-parent household where actually both of his parents are physicians, like he understands and appreciates it, and having that support at home in order to balance both of our careers is really essential, because without his support at home, without my parents or his parents or our family are finding a way to make it work, we wouldn't be able to juggle all these balls with his career and my career and the late hours of random shifts in mission control in order to get it all working towards the end. So the support system that you create is super important to help you keep your motivation in the field throughout whatever challenges you face, because they will be the net which will catch you. And if you have that strong support system, it'll give you the base that you can try to reach higher, because you know you'll be caught if you fall. And then finally, when I joined JPL, and particularly on the Mars 2020, I found that support system in the particular mission that I was working with, Mars 2020. We happened to have a really great group of individuals, a very diverse group that we don't always find, but when you get a team that can be diverse, really helps to bond as a team and to accept the different viewpoints and allow everybody to be at their best selves, and it kind of elevated the team as a whole when we were able to be that level of comfortable with each other. This is a fun picture during an American holiday called Halloween, where everyone came up dressed as different characters. We used to do fun things like dress up or go out together to different events and happy hours, and just generally socialize as a team, both inside and outside of work. So yeah, creating a support system. You can start with your family. The ones you choose for yourself are the most important, your friends and your spouse. And then finding the equalness in that support system, whether it's your friends or your spouse or your family, being able to find that solid support system. And when you get it at work, when you feel that comfort in your work family, that's when you're really open up to be able to reach for higher, to take the chance to ask for something, because you know that it'll be met with support and not rejection. So the final thing is to actively do your best. I'm sure you all get advice of work hard and do your best and try harder. This one has a little bit of a nuance to it, because I know everybody will tell you to work hard. But what I mean by actively do your best is you have to look at what you want to do and take the initiative. Not all doors are marked very clearly with, if you want to do X, then you have to go through door Y, or it's not very clear to get from one spot to the next spot what the path is. So part of it is taking the initiative to find your own path, asking for something that you think you may want, even if you don't know what the reward you'll get out of it immediately is. One of the examples of this is when I had that first internship at Goddard Space Flight Center. My actual internship was to do CAD design. They had given me a stack of papers of mechanical drawings, and I had to convert them into the computer. That was the entirety of the internship that they had planned for me. But as the other interns and I were walking around, we noticed a flyer that was posted up on the wall by the cafeteria that they were having a model rocket competition. So the other interns and I, we were very spread out. We didn't live close to each other, so we went to the advisor and asked if we could enter the model rocket competition. Not that we were asking for his permission, but we just wanted to use, our intent was to just use the office for an hour after work so that we could coordinate. He got super excited when we asked him, much more excited than we expected him to be, and actually became our mentor. He immediately drove us to the store to buy parts for the model rocket. He took us down to the machine shop and taught us how to build the nose cone and how to shape the mechanical. We had never anticipated that he would get that into it, that he would actually allow us to spend most of our internship time working on this project instead of what the original goal was. But that experience was pivotal to be able to build this rocket, even though it was a tiny rocket. It wasn't that big. It was only about this big, and it only went up maybe 10, 15 feet. But the process of building it, the process of seeing it launch, something that we had built, seeing it launch, was enormously inspiring. And that feeling of being able to see that, that's what stayed with me. That and the realization that that's what I liked, the satisfaction of seeing it work after I had built it. That part of it was what stayed with me. Eventually, I understood that to mean that I liked building things, I liked being an engineer, but that realization came later. It was the instant gratification of seeing it work that stuck by me. Second, in undergraduate, I was working on the satellite design project, and there was an opportunity for a conference that came up. At this time, undergrads were not expected to do any papers or conferences, and I went and asked the advisor if I could participate, and he was shocked. He was like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. We couldn't find a reason to not let me go. So he agreed, and I was able to go prepare a poster and present it. Not that it was a groundbreaking poster or that it was changed the world in any such way, but it was an opportunity. It was practice of being able to put together a poster. It was practice in order to stand next to a poster and give a presentation. And that practice on a small scale, because it was a fairly small conference, the practice was crucial because the research was small at this point, the conference was small, the stakes were very low. To be able to get that practice in this setting allowed me to build the skills that when I needed them later, I would have in my back pocket. It also gave me a publication credit, then which showed up on my resume that then caught the eye of recruiters. So it became a snowball effect, right? One small thing of asking for something allowed me to get this publication credit that then led to the next credit and the next experience, and just built off of that. That all started from one that I asked for without having any expectations of needing it to happen. The other one is kind of a different perspective. So as part of my PhD thesis in working on spheres, I was one of the people who got to go and train the astronauts. And one night we were having dinner with one of the astronauts, and he said, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could use these satellites not just for your lab at MIT, but open it up to all kids everywhere? I said, well, that's a very big ask and a very broad goal, but it sounds interesting so let's see what we can do, because he wanted to be able to open it up while he was on the space station to work with kids of all different age levels. So this was towards the very end of my PhD program. So we worked with my advisor, and we started a pilot program with two high school clubs to see if it could actually work, to see if we could get high school level students to actually code, and what would it look like to give them a problem, what support would we need, how would they communicate with the space station, could we make it into a game for them. None of that was in my PhD thesis. I didn't write any papers on it, and it came out primarily from just that one dinner conversation with the astronaut. But we did the pilot program. It was a huge success. I subsequently graduated, but the proof of that pilot program actually went on to create a huge program called Zero Robotics, which is now an international program for students to be able to do software competitions where the eventual goal is that their software gets to run in the space station on the set of robots. Not these robots anymore, they've actually been upgraded to another set, but it's spread from that one pilot program to several different countries, several different age ranges from I think now down to middle school age all the way through undergraduate, just from that initial dinner with the astronaut where we had an idea and tried to see if it could work. And then finally a similar one where in more of an entrepreneurial spirit, when I got to JPL, having done all of this testing both at Cornell and MIT, we noticed, me and one of my colleagues, we noticed a gap in how JPL does business. JPL is very known for big missions, right? Mars 2020, Perseverance rover is a big rover, it's the size of a car. Most of its spacecraft are like that. JPL was trying to get into small spacecraft, and they did not do small well. So we tried to bring the university feel to that, and we set up a small satellite dynamics testbed where we could get that small satellite test instead of test and build and iterate mentality, as opposed to what JPL usually did was model and simulate before you build. The lab is still growing, it's still small, but it operates on the small satellite that JPL has and has a nice research and development feel to it, kind of a small lab within the larger lab of JPL. So these are 4 examples of opportunities that were not marked, did not actually exist as a call or an application or something that someone else said that I should do. They all came from an idea, whether it was from myself or I saw someone else doing something and asked if I could do it too. And the impacts were seen much later, right? The practice you get from the talk or the understanding that you build of yourself in doing something had repercussions way far down the line that maybe not were visible then, but the sheer fact of asking, you didn't know where it was going to go, but had positive impact because it stayed true to what I was interested in, who I was, and I was actively trying to further that understanding of myself and gain experience. So that's kind of the third aspect. Actively doing your best means sometimes creating the opportunities for yourself. Use your initiative to ask for what's possible, ask for what interests you, because you never know what it could lead to. Networking is super important too, using these opportunities to meet other people, to talk to them, to really listen to what they have to say and see what it sparks in you or what questions it sparks in you that you could then go off and explore what that means for your interests in your career. And then finally, use each opportunity, whether it's a good opportunity or whether it was a failure, to learn from it, to really take the time for introspection of what it meant for you, why did it happen, what did you learn from it, and then pick your next opportunity based on that. Because there will be successes and there will be failures, but every opportunity is an opportunity to learn about yourself. And as long as you take time to do that introspection, then the journey that you have will be always leading you where you're meant to go. That is your unique path. So that's the summary of all 3 of them. And then just as a recap, the first is know yourself, understand what you are interested in, not what society or your parents or your friends may tell you that you're interested in. Create your own support system, people that will support you and your interests to help keep you motivated. Seek out the opportunities that are aligned with your goals. Use your initiative to follow the questions of what's interesting to you, focusing on what your interests and skills are. And then finally, don't give up. It's a long journey. You may not see what the end goal is, but as long as you keep moving forward and keep persevering, then you will go far. Just the final couple of pictures from launch landing, and then finally talking to President Biden at the end of lunch, which I definitely could never have imagined when I was a child. With that, I think we can take any questions.
Thank you, Madam, for the wonderfully illustrated session today. If you have any queries, please raise your hand.
My question is, when you were little, you you watch Star Trek and you like exploring new worlds, so even if it's a little bit, do you believe that there are aliens out there?
I believe that the universe is a massive, massive place, and the likelihood that we are the only planet to have ever supported life in every way is probably very small, given the size and time scale of the universe.
Thank you. I do too.
Yeah.
I'd just like to ask, like, what would it be like to emigrate to the US after doing college? Because I don't think I have a good support system over there because I don't have any relatives there, but I see the opportunity there. So what's it like living in the US alone?
So there is a lot, depending on where you go in the US, especially if you go to postgraduate education in the US, there's actually a lot of support for foreign residents and postgraduate, in the graduate level. So there's specific organizations actually broken up by, culture, or for foreign nationals in the postgraduate, or even like Indian nationals. They're generally a club or an infrastructure at every university for those foreign nationals, and they really help provide that support system, right? So they become your friend circle, and they can help with anything from picking up from the airport, or figuring out visa things, and joint shopping trips to get groceries. I didn't necessarily have that experience, but it's similar in living alone, because where I went to school, I didn't have any family where I went to school, so it's a similar experience. If you rely on the friends that you have, that you make at the college to become your support system, and everything from having dinners together and studying together to exploring together, they really form your support system, helping to find a job, going shopping for interview clothes or resume building. At each university, you can generally find a group that's set up to do that, and you'll find your niche in that group to provide that home away from home feel.
Thank you.
Anyone from this side? I can come back to you. Anyone from this side? Yes.
I want to be asked you, what is your favorite country, India or America?
That's like asking a favorite child. You can't ask a parent what their favorite child is. I will get hurt. I vote equally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, questions?
So you have emphasized on how your support system is better and your journey. Can you emphasize on some hardships you might have faced throughout your journey?
Yeah. So one of the first ones, when I was still in high school, I had applied to a science and technology high school. That's before I was in high school, actually, when I was in middle school. My sister had gone, my older sister had gone there, my older cousins had gone there, and for our local area, that was the best high school. If you wanted to do anything science, that's the high school that you went to. And I got rejected. I actually got rejected twice, first for 9th standard and then for 10th standard. And that was a huge blow, because for me, if I couldn't even get into high school, how could I get into a college, a good college, and what did that mean for getting a job? So that took a while to get over, to understand that there may be other factors around you that you can't control whether you get in or not, but what you can control is the next step and how much effort that you put into the next step to keep trying, or whatever creative solutions that you can come up to get the same effect eventually. Another hardship was when I was a year out from finishing my doctoral degree, my lab went bankrupt and they could no longer fund me, and the amount that, and it happened very suddenly, so there was no time to apply for fellowships, there was no time to apply for financial aid, and suddenly I had to put up all of this money to just finish out my program, and it was very last minute. I didn't have that amount of money to pay the fees to allow me to finish, so that was a huge, like, what do I do now? I've had this entire career, and I'm so close to the finish line, and suddenly there's this huge roadblock that's preventing me from going to the next step. It took at that point, I took a creative solution. So I worked with my advisor. I found a loophole in the legal terms of the university that if I was working at the same time, that depending on where I was working, they had like a different set of fee structure. So I found a creative solution that I could get a job elsewhere and then pay a different set of fees and get reimbursed. So it was a very complicated setup, but it really enforced finding the creative solution to work around any obstacle that you may face. And those are two examples, I guess.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask you what are your views on a particular stream which is known as astrobiology? Like you said earlier that you had some deep associations with biology, but what about astrobiology?
Astrobiology in terms of life elsewhere in the solar system, or astrobiology is like aerospace medicine astrobiology?
Ma'am, by astrobiology, what I meant to say was like a mission you said, Perseverance. It was on like astrobiology, right? Like finding out life in Mars in a particular creator type. So what are your views in it? Like, is it a good stream to like? Is there any way where you can explore many things? Like more or less in what you said engineering was, it was about mathematic terms, right? For the students of biology, astrobiology is a stream where there is, yeah. So
Yeah, I think that, so I will say there are a lot of ways to contribute to space exploration or space science. Space itself, there's a huge plethora of science that then can be applied to space. It's an environment, right? So things like chemistry or biology or geology or astronomy, like they all have different places where they apply to in space exploration. So I have friends who are trained as chemists or who are trained as physicists, do like plasma flow, who are trained as biologists, who are trained in geology, who are trained in rocks. It really depends on what your personal interest is and what type of field interests you the most to determine where your best reaches. All of these fields are important and they all serve, they all are different facets of serving to answer the same questions in different perspectives, right? The astrobiology or the search for exoplanets through astronomy, they're all eventually different ways of trying to piece together the question of whether we're alone in the universe. And all of those pieces are important because until we get the full picture, we won't be able to answer that question. So I think they're all equally important, but more important is to find the one that interests you the most or sparks your imagination the most, that's tactical to find the right path. That's
thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions from this side? Yes.
Hi. So my question to you is that what's the one achievement that you are most proud of in your career? Like one that makes you think that all of the hardships were worth it?
I think I would have to say landing day for Perseverance, mostly because out of all the different things that I've worked on or worked for, that has been the one that I have worked on with singular focus for the longest consecutive period in my life. Even an undergraduate, that was only 4 years. Even graduate school, that was only 5 years, you know. But Perseverance, to work 8 years in a single role, in a single mission for one day, right? The entire 8 years, we knew that we were gonna land on February 18th. To work that long and hard for a singular moment, and then see that moment go successfully, that was an immense feeling of satisfaction.
Right, thank you. Just another question. So again, it's like you said, asking a parent who your favorite child is. But do you think you would ever work for ISRO?
I would love to work in collaboration with ISRO. I actually asked when the NISAR project was being formulated to to see if I could get my heels into work on the NISAR, but they wouldn't let me off of Mars 2020 at that time. So they said I had to finish up Mars 2020. So maybe eventually. I mean, I think NASA and ISRO are at the early stages of the collaboration. I think we're going to see more collaboration between the two organizations going forward. So I think there's great possibilities for future work between the two organizations.
That's all. Thanks.
Questions?
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, how do you overcome from failures, or how do you deal with failures? Because as we know, success is a journey, not a destination. So failure is a constant companion.
Yeah, failure is hard. I mean, that's what the support system is really helpful for. Most of the time I go back and I talk to my family, and it's helpful to talk it out, to express the feelings, and I rely on their feedback of being able to remind me that one failure doesn't define my journey, that there's still value in what I do, and use that as motivation to keep trying. A lot of it has to be willing to take the introspection to understand what it was about that particular failure that maybe were mistakes that I made that I could do better, or even if it depends on what it is. I would rather, I came to the realization, there's actually a quote that's the motto of JPL that is, I'm probably not going to get it entirely correctly when I say this, but it's something to the fact that it's far better to win glorious triumphs, though checkered by significant defeat, than to live in the great twilight of someone who knows neither victory nor defeat. And that's basically saying failure is hard to deal with, but regret is worse. So regardless of how bad the failure, I would rather have the failure and to know which side of the line I ended up on than to always wonder whether I could have done it or what that would have meant for my career to have done it.
Good morning, ma'am. I am Devojyoti Shah from the New Horizon High School. I want to ask you a question that working on the Mars mission, what are the probabilities of colonization humans species in the Mars in near future?
That's an interesting question. I actually been asked that a lot recently. So Perseverance's main objective was to seek the signs of past life on Mars. In order to seek the signs of past life, we need to make sure that Mars is still pristine. So we actually have a lot of requirements on the spacecraft that we send to Mars to make sure that we don't bring any sort of organic molecules or contaminants from Earth to Mars, because anything that we detect on Mars, we want to make sure that it's Martian before we detect. So things like colonization rely on seeding from Earth to Mars. So I think there's a push-pull there. If we really want to detect whether there's been life on Mars or not, we have to answer that question first before we do colonization. Because once we do colonization, we will disrupt the pristine nature of Mars and we'll no longer be able to answer that question. So that's what I think we're focusing now on the first question of whether there's life on Mars. Maybe eventually we'll have that answer and be able to move to the second part. But those are in a little bit of conflict with each other.
Thank you. I think this will be the last question we'll take.
Hello ma'am, I just wanted to ask that what are the main obstacles you have faced in the journey of a little girl to GPL?
Journey of a little girl to JPL. I would say for most of my early years, it was the overcoming the impression that as a female that there was not a place for me in engineering, or certainly not a place in a technical field like controls, which is very math heavy. A lot of the friends that I had didn't necessarily, at that age, didn't necessarily understand it. I was often one of the few females in my classes, which was a little bit isolating. And having to keep going through that and keep pushing past that to tell myself to go to the next level, even if that was the case. It took effort, took a lot of effort until I finally got to the point where I'm comfortable with my role and my job, and I feel appreciated by my peers and have a good support system.
I am Supratim Bhattacharya from the New Horizon High School, and my question is, what is your first experience in working for NASA?
My first experience working for NASA was at the Goddard Space Flight Center. That's the one where I built model rockets. I was only in 11th standard then. It was only for 2 weeks, but it was my very first time having a NASA badge and being able to walk on a NASA campus as someone who was working there, not as a visiting tourist, because we visited some of the NASA centers when I was little. But when I was 16, I worked at NASA Goddard for 2 weeks. That was my very first job experience.
Thank you so much, and thank you, madam, for this session and literally inspiring us all to shoot for the skies. It's time for a group photograph, so I would request madam to please come within us, and then we'll continue from there. It's my privilege to offer the vote of thanks on behalf of Birla Industrial and Technological Museum for this enriching interactive session. We are humbled and inspired by you, Dr. Swati Mohan. Your presence is a privilege and a huge moral booster for us. I would request on behalf of Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, Mr. Tushar Sengupta to please hand over a small token of appreciation from our end. We are grateful to Mr. Juan Clark, Public Diplomacy Officer and Assistant Director, American Center, Kolkata, for initiating and facilitating today's session. Thank you, sir. Your presence is a huge moral booster for us. We are thankful to all officers and coordinators from the US Consulate General, Kolkata, for their unwavering support and cooperation. We are very much thankful to Director BITM, Shri Shubham Chaudhary, who is joining us remotely, Director NCSM Headquarters and Director in Charge BITM, Shri Rajiv Nag. Your caring guidance and step-by-step mentoring enable the organization of this event. We convey our thanks to all the participating students coming from Santoshpur Rishi Aurobindo Balika Vidyapeeth, the New Horizon School, Ruby Park Public School, Nagpala High School, Army Public School, PN Shri KV Baliganj, Pandua Radharani Girls High School, Shushila Birla Girls School, Sharad Chaudhary Shur Institution, Khalsa Girls High School and Khalsa English High School. Your enthusiasm is the main spirit of this session. Deep regards to all teachers, parents, guardians and escorts of participating students whose guidance and supervision have enabled the presence of such bright students amongst us. Special thanks to all our supporters from different electronic and print media for covering and providing wide publicity to our initiatives, which increase the outreach and impact of our activities. We express our sincerest thanks to everybody present in this august audience for being with us through this entire session. Many thanks to all colleagues of BITM for making this event possible. We thank everybody associated with these events, one way or the other. Thank you very much to all. Thank you. I request all the students to be seated. Our people from print and electronic media are please requested to follow our team right into. Students, please be seated. People from the media are requested to assemble for the press conference on the ground floor, and we request all our diplomats to please be assembled in the ground floor press conference for an interaction with Dr. Mohan. Thank you so much.